Hello, today's mission is to install a second-hand window frame here, which is presently resting in that space into the wall. And there's a couple of problems I need to solve. One, that there's a piece of glass missing from it, and the second is I don't have any putty to put the glass in with. So these two problems I'm going to solve with what I have to hand here. So first thing I need to do is get the frame down from the wall and somewhere and clean it up. So we'll do that first. Okay, the first thing I need to do is to replace this pane of glass. Now, the pane of glass that sat in here was broken before it came out, so there is little bits of glass, there's the old putty, and there's the odd nail still in the frame. Of course, that all needs to come out and make it completely clear before the next piece of glass will sit in here. So to do that job, I'm just going to use a hammer, a very old chisel, and a scraper. So let's get on and scrape and knock all of these old bits out. Whilst I've been hammering away here, cleaning all this up, I realised something that some people might not know, and that's when you use a chisel, there's the two sides. So there's the flat side and there's the beveled side. Now, when you use a chisel along a surface and you've got the bevel side up, as it goes along, what it wants to do is dig into the material and plough along, so it'll dig a slither of wood out. If you turn it over the other way, as you're going along, it glides along the wood and just takes the surface off. So if you're doing something where you don't want to dig into the wood, you use it upside down and tap it. It then takes the surface off without digging into the wood. Of course, if you're going to have it flat and cut the edge off of the, you can use the other way round. Just a little tip for those who've not done much with the chisel before. You can use it upside down to stop it cutting in. So if there's any little nails like this left in there, you can pull them out with pliers. So just grip them and pull them out. So this is going to take me a while to clean this up, so I suggest you go and have a cup of tea, or I pause the video recording. Probably pause the video recording. Come back when it's cleaned up. Next part is to test fit the piece of second-hand glass. So this is one I cut out of a big broken pane. You don't want to see the fiascos I had with breaking the first one. So I didn't film cutting this one anyway, but I can cut in a little piece of the tips that I've learnt since that enable me to cut this one. So first of all, I'm just going to test fit this one. Perfect. Nice. So I'll show you the tips that I've learnt to cut the glass, and then we'll get on with making the putty. Okay, first tip is with the surface that you're going to cut it on. This surface looks fine until you run your hand over it and you realise that it's actually got dips. It's not as smooth, level and flat as you'd like it to be, and the glass could crack when you cut on it. So first thing is to find a nice level flat surface to cut on. So it needs to be fairly secure, not move around and not give too much. And then after that you need to have a forgiving surface on it. So a piece of carpet, a rag or something similar, not something too deep but something which has got a little bit of give in it. The next thing after that is your piece of glass. Most second-hand glass comes in various states, so it actually needs to be cleaned off, because dirty glass, I found, doesn't cut as well as clean glass. So we'll just give that a wipe over on the side we want to cut. Take all the old moss off. Lay our cloth out. Place the glass that we want to cut on the surface. Next thing is you can mark the glass where you want to cut it, measure it, and mark it. There's two ways of marking things. One is if you just draw a straight line, it could be at any point that's the correct place for it to be. So you've got the width of the line. If you do a V, then the point is the actual point of the measurement. So that's the way I usually mark things. But just for cutting this bit of scrap, we're not going to bother with that. Here I have a cutter, and in this case I didn't have any diesel or light oil, so what I've used methylated spirits. It works just as well, it just evaporates a bit quicker, but in some cases that's nice for it to be cleaned off the surface before you go. So next thing is there's a couple of ways of holding the cutter. Hold it like a pen, or another way that I've seen done is to hold it between the two fingers with the thumb supporting behind. And the main thing with it is that you don't lean it over from side to side. It must stay upright all the way through the marking. The other things we have is that you can cut along a straight edge. So we'll get a straight edge and cut along that. So any straight edge which forms a line, so you can cut along it. Bear in mind that the cutter wheel is in the middle of this, so when something's against the side it'll be stood off of it by a little bit. So we can just run it along to cut in a straight line. This time I'm not going to cut a straight line, I'm going to do a little bit of creative cutting. So what we need to do is when we press on it, with this one, when you press the end, it pushes in and allows a little bit of the fluid onto the cutting wheel. So make sure you push it down and you get fluid coming out. You can try it on a surface and see that it's wet. And it makes a line. So next thing is the cut itself. Now when we cut, we want it to be a nice smooth action. with the same pressure all the way through from one end to the other. So what I'm going to do is push it down and you'll hear the sound. So that's the sort of sound. If you saw it backwards and forwards, you'll blunt the tool and you won't get a very good cut. So once we've scored it, you'll see, hopefully there, a line on it. Just here. So that's scored this side. And what we need to do is turn it over and put it back on the cloth. And then we get in close to see the next piece. Okay, so we locate where the line is going across here. Don't know if you can just make it out on there. And what we're going to do is use the tail end of this or any other little hammer and tap it directly above where that line is, that score line. And as we tap it, you'll see the crack appear all the way through to this side. So we just do it in little taps along that line. Once it's tapped all the way along, we can just snap it off. And that's cutting the glass. So now we've done this, we've learnt how to cut glass. We'll go back to the window and we'll make up some putty and put the glass in the window. Putty next. Okay, let's make some putty then. Now, the only reason I'm making it is because I haven't got any here and I have all the ingredients to make it, so I might as well make it. What I'm going to use is, I'm going to use boiled linseed oil. So I'm going to make a linseed oil putty, and it's only 2 ingredients. It's that and polyfiller plaster of Paris, basically anything that's a white soft dust. If you don't have any of this either, which the other day I didn't have any, so I had to make some up to use as a filler for the walls. And what I did was I made it up using old plasterboards, and so you can use this as well. This works exactly the same. And this is gypsum, so I'll put the link to the video of how I make this powdered gypsum below in case you don't have any other filler. So first thing we're going to do is take a not so accurate measure of powder, just tip out what you think you're going to need in a quantity. It's quite a big pain to put in, so we'll probably need a bit more than that. Now, I'm doing it on a piece of cardboard, but you can do it on a plate, on a saucer, in a bowl, anything you want. I'm only doing it on here so you can see it better with the colour. Now, the next thing is finding a way of getting into these bottles. All I do is just add a small amount of oil, and like you were making cement or anything else, you just tip the dry ingredient into the oil. And keep mixing it into the oil. That's the first bit. Put a bit more oil in. Mix it in. Same again. Now, you can use plain linseed oil, but it takes a lot longer for it to set. So what we get in the shops nowadays as boiled linseed oil is actually normally linseed oil with chemicals in it that make it set quicker. Whereas traditionally we'd take the linseed oil, which is flax seeds, and then we'd just boil it until it became a bit darker and thicker, and then it sets much more easily. So once you start getting it into a more of a solid, you can just keep working it until you absorb as much of the powder as you can. Once you get a certain amount on, and it becomes a bit doughy, you can start getting your fingers in there, and that's when it gets really fun. So I shall have to make up a few of these amounts. Now this can be kept in an airtight container to be used at a different time, and if it dries out slightly, just put a little drop of linseed oil in it with it, and it will be reusable again. So that's our putty mix. Quite soft, it could do with a little bit more powder in there, so we'll powder that up before we put our hands in there. That just firms it up a bit. That makes it able to be used now. So we can now handle this and roll it into our shape to put the window in. Right, next tips for putting the window in. Okay, so the first part of getting this glass into this recess is to actually put a bit of putty in behind where the glass is going to go. And it doesn't need to be much, but it's just to form a little seal along the edge. So I'm just going to squash a little bit in all the way around the edge, just to even out any of those gouges and keep the water out from both sides. Any condensation running down on the inside of the window ever won't get into the wood in the bottom here. So I'll just go right the way round the frame with that before putting the glass in. Okay, once we've gone all the way around the edge, putting this little bit in, we're then going to insert the glass. The glass should just drop into place, and then we'll just gently push it all the way round to seat it down. On that putty. Now, once that's in place, they're going to secure it with a couple of little tacks to hold it in whilst it all sets. So, this is not the ideal hammer for it, but it'll do. So just put it on the edge and slide them up. Resting the hammer head on the glass, so I'm not hitting the glass, it's just sliding on it. And another one further up. And a couple on the other side. Okay, once they're all in, we can then putty up the edge. Do the same as we did below. And take a bit of putty. Make it nice into shape, and then just squeeze it in place. There we go, right over those nails, go all the way round with that. Once it's all the way round, we can then take our putty knife and get it into space, into the place, smooth it out. And just get a nice smooth finish all the way round. So I'm going to carry on and do this to the rest of the window and bring you back once I've got to that point. Okay, so that's how I've managed to glaze this window without going and buying a piece of glass and without having any putty. So all that remains for me to do now is cut a hole in the wall, build a frame for this to sit in and attach it in place.